My name is Joe Collins and I am Power Trading Manager at Gáis Energy. So I think from the previous slides it's pretty clear why my colleagues on the gas trading desk would be interested in this stress testing and scenario analysis tool. What I'm going to do over the next couple of slides is explain why, as a power trader, I'm interested in the tool. I'll do that by first giving a brief overview of the electricity market in Ireland for some people who mightn't be familiar with it. Then I'll link it to Mel's model, and then what I'll do is I'll finish up by outlining a few questions that I see coming down the horizon given the changes in the power market and issues that we're seeing right now. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the single electricity market, which is the market in operation in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, it came into being in 2007, and it's called a gross mandatory pool as opposed to a bilateral market which you'd have operating in the UK and most continental European markets. Now, a gross mandatory pool operates such that any generator that produces energy must sell that energy into the pool, and all suppliers who feed their end users or their retail base take that energy from the pool and give it to their customers at a particular price. Now, the price is determined each 30-minute trading period, and it's called a system marginal price. And the market operates such that generators must bid in their short-run marginal cost, and then the market operator, CMO, what they do then each day is they run an algorithm which determines which combination of generators need to run to meet demand at the least possible cost to the overall system. Now, where I come in as a power trader, I'm effectively sitting outside this graph, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at the amount of generation that Gáis has. I'm looking on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I'm looking at the amount of demand our retail base has. I'm trying to procure hedges where possible to match our demand and supply. There's a number of hedging tools that are available to us. One such tool is contract for differences, which I'll briefly describe in 2 slides' time. And these are financial hedges that we enter into with counterparties. So just the second slide, again explaining the market. So we've talked about a gross mandatory pool, but what are the key influences or factors that affect the market? Well, given that generators must bid in their short-run marginal cost in each day into the market, clearly fuel prices are the biggest driver, or one of the biggest drivers. The price at which a gas generator can produce energy compared to a coal generator, it feeds into what they call the merit order, so that's a huge determinant of the price. Renewable generation, we've got close to 2 gigs of renewable generation on the island at the moment, so as increasing renewable is built out, it will have potentially a dampening impact on prices, and as you can see today it's pretty windy, so that'll potentially have an impact on prices which will be published officially in 4 days' time. Another big impact that we're seeing, and it will probably be a bigger impact with the East-West interconnector operating, is the interconnection between Ireland and the UK. So currently there's 750 megawatts of interconnection between both markets, and typically with UK power prices lower than Ireland at the moment, what you're seeing is generally imports from the UK to Ireland, and that will also have a dampening price. Another key input into determining price is the system demand. As you can imagine, the more demand you have on the system, the higher your price, because you need to schedule less efficient generation to run to meet your demand. So really what we've been talking about in the last 2 slides is the spot market, which is very liquid because the price is published officially 4 days after delivery. One of the tools that we have as power traders is entering into contracts, as I said, which are called contracts for differences, and that offers you a chance to forward hedge. So one of the types of contract for differences are directed contracts, and that's actually governed by the regulatory authorities, And what happens is that every quarter they have an auction round going out 5 quarters into the future, and they determine a regression pricing model which comes from Plexus and some regression analysis that they do. And here in this slide I've just taken, for example, Q313, the baseload electricity contract, and each day during the auction window suppliers such as myself can subscribe and buy a certain volume of these contracts, and the price at which they get the contracts or buy the power effectively is given by that formula there. So you just get the gas price that you see in the UK on the day, you get the coal price in dollars and the CO2 price which would be in euros. So when you feed in the components and you look at the various elements, gas in that formula would typically make up about 80% of the price. Coal in that formula 4%, CO2 another small percentage, and the constant comes up with about 13%. So you can see that as a power trader that the forward curve or forward electricity prices is hugely influenced by the gas price in the UK. So not alone are my colleagues on the gas trading desk interested in looking at the scenario analysis and stress testing tool, it's also something which is hugely important to the power market. So I just thought it would be interesting to show what happened in March 13, for example, because I know that a particularly cold month and it made headlines in some UK papers. So past winter weather-wise was colder than average, and as a result in the UK heading into the month of March, the storage, which Mel previously described, storage facilities in the UK were largely empty heading into the start of April. Now, the month of March was one of the coldest Marches in the past 50 years. So what you can see in this graph is that with sudden outages around the middle graph there, you can see that there was a huge price spike. Also towards the right hand side of the graph, again there was another outage. And what had happened was that prices for the previous year were averaging about 61 pence per term on a day ahead basis. At the start of at the start of March, with storage empty, colder weather coming up, prices went up to 70 pence per term on a day ahead basis. And then with these sudden outages, you had prices spiking up to 95p over pound a term. And in fact, on one day, around the 22nd, 23rd of March, prices within a day spiked up to £1.50 a term. And you would definitely see the impact on your electricity price as a result of that, because in Ireland gas generators are at the margin now, and hence they're typically setting the price. So that kind of gives the motivation of why on the power side we use this stress testing tool. What I'll finish up with now is just a couple of areas that I think in Bord Gáis we'll either be looking at, but I know in the industry it'll also be of interest. So on a wider context, a huge issue which is facing the market is the European target model. So on electricity and gas, in electricity in particular, Ireland has to come up with a new market model to comply with European legislation, and it needs to be implemented roughly by Q3, Q4 2016. So I guess the first question is, what is this model going to look like? And once there is a rough model or a model design, then people need to start thinking about what is the impact on wholesale electricity prices. The other question is then actually, how are you going to model the impact on wholesale electricity prices, because it's not straightforward. So that's, I know a lot of companies in this room are looking at this now, and it's definitely something that we'll be hearing a lot more about in the coming months. On the wind side, what is the current impact of wind on wholesale electricity prices? So that can be quantified. But other questions, so what is the impact of curtailment or constraints on wind prices? when we have this European target model in 2016, how will wind impact the new market then, especially given that we'll have a lot more wind resources built out at that stage? And more importantly, one thing which I haven't seen a lot of, and I know people will begin to think a lot more about it, is how do we begin to quantify and price the uncertainty around the wind volumes that we have? If the market model is different, there could potentially be a difference to having a forecast wind volume and a different volume being delivered. And finally, one thing which is of interest to us as well, and I'm glad to see that there's a poster outside on this, and something that James mentioned, is the application of real option pricing models to quantify the premium implicit in refit pricing. So they're just some of the future challenges I see coming down the path, and I know that, as I said, a lot of people here are already looking at that stuff. So that's it from me. Thanks.